my personal experience with racism started when my first child entered preschool, and it took me a long time to understand why she was not fully integrated and supported. Our question is, why is it so hard for Americans, or why is it so hard to talk about racism in America?
Well, I think there's guilt. You have resentment, you've got guilt, you've got the memory of legacy. And
What do you mean by
I think,
memory of legacy? I'm sorry. What do you mean?
so the memory of legacy meaning, for whites, and Mary, you can speak more to this than I can, but that legacy of remembering that I may have had an ancestor who owned slaves, or I have ancestors who were not particularly favorable towards people who didn't look like me. And then I also think on the African American side, it's that legacy of remembering, well, I had family members that were owned, that were considered property. And so you've got the anger, you've got resentment, you've got guilt, you've got this legacy, and people don't want to forget that. And I understand you don't want to forget that part of your history, and you should not. But it takes strength to be able to move beyond that and say, okay, so this happened, it's a fact, it happened. What can we do to move beyond this and
I'm sorry,
have
Kim.
better relations?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt
among
you, but
all people.
yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused. So you said that they don't want to forget this? They don't want to forget that their ancestors had slaves, or what do they don't want to forget?
Were owned. That their ancestors, their grandparents, not grandparents, but a few generations back,
So,
people were considered property.
okay, so
So
who doesn't want to forget?
I think African Americans don't want to forget that,
Don't want.
and don't want to, and should not forget that. I mean, that's part of our legacy. That's a lot of the reasons why we've ended up in the U.S. and in colonies around the world. That's a big part of that. It
So,
shapes a lot of us.
so how does this affect our discomfort of talking about racism? I mean, we or African American, they don't want to forget what happened, and how does this relate to the unease of talking about racism? And this, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes, I know. So
Mm.
I think it's the underlying anger, this anger that, I wouldn't be here except that someone bought and sold one of my ancestors and brought them over here. So there,
Okay.
you've got this underlying anger, and then you've got this also underlying anger that, after emancipation, there was no help. So you're just kind of left on our own. So you've got all this underlying anger that's kind of built up to a point where, it kind of feels like, well, I want to tell you, but you're not going to listen to me. And so the anger you just hold it in, and it builds up and builds up, and then it just breaks out. And it breaks out in some of the most unreasonable ways.
Did you notice that it is hard to talk about racism? Is it hard?
I think generally it is, it's not like it's not an easy topic because there's a lot of hatred and violence and anger and denial. When people don't want to talk about things that hurt, or people don't want to talk about things that they feel that they're accused of or guilty of, or there's blame. Or they don't want to see because, white people just want like a kind of there's this easy life. Like, why should I talk about something that is going to make me feel uncomfortable or make me feel unsafe, right? But Kim, to your point, what you were saying, and I agree fully and completely, we need to open that dialogue. We need to step into that discomfort. And I've been working on my discomfort with how I was raised and how I was brought up, and the racism and the bias that's still sort of I'm confronted with myself, and it's horrifying. I have a few friends that I talk with very directly, like, in confronting, like, these are the things that are going through my head. Why are they going through my head? Where did they come from? Why was I acculturated to believe that when I know it's not true and it's not in my heart?
Like
You
what?
know,
Like what, Mary? I mean, give me example. It looks to me, okay, it looks to me that you also have feelings or ideas that were, I don't know, implanted in you, or maybe the society puts it
yeah.
in you, and you are trying to fight this idea or take them out. Or so,
Yeah.
can you tell us
Yeah.
what kind of ideas? I mean,
You know, a friend of mine, she lives in New York City, and we always talk about the bus and the subway because she says life happens on the subway or on the bus. Um, in the greater DC area, you get on the metro or the subway, and it's very mixed. It's very diverse, and it's, to the extent, of course, that some lines are more than others, but generally speaking, you kind of see a lot going on. And for an example, when I get on a bus, I've made this a habit for a long time. I actually sit next to a person that is not like me intentionally. So I don't look for the other white people on the bus. I look for anyone who's different from me. So it could be, a Latino woman, or it could be a black guy in the back. It could be, an old man on the side. I mean, or any ethnicity, any color, anything, or a child, someone who just isn't like me. And I gravitate towards that person because I want to create that mix. If I'm standing someplace and, like, there's a bunch of white people over there, and then there's, like, a bunch of black people over there, or black, brown or whatever color, I will intentionally, like, move in a direction not near the white people, but near where, there's anyone else. And it doesn't necessarily do anything. It doesn't necessarily make me feel better or worse. It's just, in that instance, I'm aware of our self-segregation. And I want to challenge myself in that. And that's just it's a very simple, example of me being aware of walking into places in being around people that just don't look like me or have different experiences.
so did you
I
grow
don't
up?
know if it has any effect, but say it
Did,
again.
Yeah, did you grow up in segregated places? Like you grew up with mostly white, we went to white schools. Uh, it looks to me that segregation is part of your
Oh,
struggle.
I can't hear you, Hanan. Can you
Yeah.
just say it again?
Yes, I feel that
Oh,
segregation,
yes.
yes.
I grew up completely rural. No, there was no, we all looked the same. We all had the same religion. We all did the same thing. It was very homogenous. I traveled a lot when I was, when I was in college. I lived abroad. Graduate school was a bit of a turning point for me when I took courses in social identity, cross-cultural communication, and looked at my own identity, my own culture, and was really an extremely, like, a globally diverse campus of people. It was a small school in Brattleboro, Vermont, and that's where I really started the work on myself. But living abroad and being around different people was and traveling is my own initiative. But I grew up extremely homogenous. Yeah.
But still, I do feel that you have some pain. I mean, because why it is painful for you? I mean,
I think there's what it touches on in me, and it's in my heart of like, compassion or empathy. It hurts me to see other people hurting. And I have sort of empathy for people who are suffering, and why racism hurts is because it's such profound, compounded hurt and pain, and it's sometimes too much to bear, but it's worse in silence, and it helps to talk about it. It helps to open it up, and being white, I sort of, I can work on myself, and I'm trying, but it's there's they call it, there's like white guilt, and it's really real, like how the effect that I can have is just in myself, and being an advocate and being an ally and calling out whenever I can, and that relieves a little bit of the hurt. I can't ignore it. I can no longer ignore it. So it's just, I think, my personality that it hurts me to see other people hurting.